rise of China. And you have got a unipolar world that become bipolar again. And in the bipolar, manufacturing is controlled by China. Finance is controlled by America. Now how is America to keep this? They are worried. One is the expansion of Chinese market. Secondly, BRICS are attacking the de-dollarization. So what President Trump has done is now to attack those. Why? To weaken the manufacturing, because he is the biggest market. So they've broken all the rules of the game in putting different tariffs. And thereby he is trying to also negotiate. But it's also causing problems. So what he is doing, that changing the rules that he could protect their financial power and then break that of China and also the other countries that are threats. So he identified the BRICS. So which means this whole thing has now come apart. But it doesn't mean that we have to give up the whole idea of a trading system which has been there for long. So how do you put it together? But you're finding now finance, the financial issues and all, and the trade issues are being replaced by two issues, that is geopolitics and geoeconomics are coming together.
So just an additional question. So if you see President Trump's move as an attempt to weaken China's manufacturing, in this level of globalization, how do you see the success rate or failure rate of it, and what would be the repercussions for the rest of the world and how it would unfold?
I think what Trump is doing is trying to protect the dollar. In the process, trying to reduce China's growth. So that means to that extent, China can't take on. But I don't know, because the total markets are going to develop in our part of the world. Secondly, Chinese in manufacturing is far ahead of anyone else. You can't take them on. So, if you look at it, a new scenario can emerge. It's not only China, even Japan, Korea resisting what's happening. Now, if they sort of further activate the RCEP, which has all of East Asia plus Australia and ASEAN, can they then come to fix a date by which many of the agreements are over? Then within that you have ASEAN. Then within ASEAN, next to that you have the comprehensive progressive trans-Pacific partnership, that's the Japanese one. Then Chinese have BRI. So it's a big question. Then what do you do? India has to have some agreement, but they dropped out of RCEP, but the Americans put pressure. And now all of us, that's why I moved to get into the RCEP. That is why it becomes big. Then what about the BRICS? In any case, the Middle East is tariff free. So you can see a big economic zone come out of that. And obviously, EU might also have a chance of having agreement with them. Because US only controls 25% of the global economy. These people together can take on them.
A tough game like rugby, it's also a game like chess. So, what are the political challenges that you see on these globalization challenges?
So now what is the next step? At the moment, virtually all countries are being bullied. But at some stage, a new combination has to come out. And we know the growth is going to be in Asia. There will be in America and Asia. Europe is not a no-go area. So, for me, is the need to revive the RCEP. And if we are talking of international politics, I would ask China, Japan to start moving on the RCEP, comprehensive and progressive TPP, which UK is a member. Yes. And Sri Lanka, I have already made an application for RCEP. We should go into it. India will also, I think, now that India will finish, US, they have done, UK and EU, they have to then look at certainly RCEP for what they are going to do. So It's a question now of some of the countries taking the lead in Asia to ask for ourselves. This is what is happening. The other worry that we have is what is the impact of the big beautiful act on the American economy, the global economy. We are talking of this, but there is going to be basically the adverse impact of what the Congress has passed. And what you are seeing now is a complete disruption of trade. Trade agreements which had come over 25 years now is being thrown away, and new arrangements, not even agreements, are being put in place in something like 8 weeks. So the disruption is such, we still don't know what the impact will be on the global economy. As it is now, the Wall Street Journal reported yesterday, inflation is going up in the US. So there is a big uncertainty and there is a big question mark over what the next phase will be.
Any questions from the audience that or anyone would like to contribute to the conversation? Yes, can we have a microphone to the front row, please?
President, you talked about China being a sort of preeminent power in manufacturing. People like Raghuram Rajan have talked about the opportunities being in the services side. And Trump seems to be completely ignoring services except with regard to some of the online taxes and so on that Europe is pushing and Canada is. What are your thoughts about the services side? And again, you mentioned TCP/IPP. If you go to that particular trade agreement, it will have to be very heavy on the services side. Are we capable of doing that?
No, one, Trump is ignoring services because then his case gets weak. US has ceased to be a manufacturing economy. It has now to go into services. So he is ignoring services. That is the event for him now. I mean, we are looking at all these, we are in Sri Lanka now saying how much we have contributed to the American economy, how much we have got from them. But we never add up what we are giving from Coca-Cola and Pepsi. There are so many things like that on the services side. If you add, then the deficit has to be smaller. No, I think Sri Lanka has to remember whatever it is, the globalization or the Washington concept of manufacturing, looking at the best platform for competitive value addition is gone because you now control it not by competition but by tariffs. And then what can we do? So we ourselves have to look at moving out from moving into services, into agriculture. So those are the suggestions that have been made. But where can we make the money out of it? We can't just be here. Our problem is we have lived too long on one manufactured product. And then I think after that we added rubber. That's all. That we are living in another world. Not what China is living or Trump is living. So we have to come at least to one of these other worlds.
Congratulations, Dr. Rajapatrana. It's wonderful to see a piece of writing by you. Again, I have a question for the former president and one to Dr. Rajapatrana. Mr. President, I think we are seeing trade and investment policies blur the lines with national security policies and certain other policies that have nothing to do with trade and investment. For example, national security, we have Singapore, Australia, Canada introducing national security clauses into their investment policies. Now we see Trump, even on the trade tariff issue, hitting back at the Bolsonaro trial, saying, I will introduce more tariffs if you don't lift this trial, nothing to do with trade. So my question to you is, and maybe even Dr. Rajapatrana, is how do you see that playing out, where there are all these new considerations, and how Sri Lanka should think about it, because these are things that will increasingly come to us as well. Dr. Rajapatrana, my question to you is, because in the introduction to the book you say that it's also beyond economics, that you look at history, ideology and so on. Yeah. Why do you think that in Sri Lankan society we seem to have this, we are lacking this consensus, or there's an unfinished consensus around whether globalization has worked for us or not, and whether we like it or not? Because we have these some sectors where we like it, some instances where we go away from it. That's my question to you. Thank you.
You know, Trump's remarks on Bolsonaro, is such that there's such a big backlash that if the court doesn't convict him, people might even go and surround the court. That's all that has happened.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, you're playing. You just because you make a statement here, it doesn't mean that politics is going to turn out that way. Now it is. The try is to convict him. So he's losing his chance of a fair trial. All because President Trump went and intervened. National security means, when you put it into your investment clause, it means you are not having Chinese coming in. Now for Singapore it is not a major problem because Singapore is a big investor in China, about 30 billion, and they are one of the big guys who are driving this whole West China chunking. And what America forgets is at the end of the day, the vast majority in Singapore is Chinese. Canada and all are doing that to keep the Chinese out. But China is coming through other areas. I mean, if they can't invest in Canada, they will invest elsewhere. In Indonesia or Malaysia or Sri Lanka or some other places. And remember, the only other option to the Suez Canal is the belt. No one else has produced anything else. You can't see Middle East, India, Middle East, Israel one is off now. And after the bombing of Iran, that is out. So you're just taking ad hoc decisions. And Chinese are waiting and then looking at what they have to do. This is what happened now even with the tariffs. Chinese waited for them to walk into a trap. So it is becoming, they are using this as political. It's not only this. Now look at EU. When Russia went into Ukraine, what did they do? They froze all the assets of Russians and the Russian government in the European Union. And now they are talking of confiscating it. You can take over the assets, but you must be declared an enemy state. No one has declared Russia enemy state. So as a result, what's happened is people are moving their money out of London into Dubai.
Yeah.
They are frightened. They don't want to keep it in, but you have broken it. So UK has lost out by leaving the EU, and secondly by threatening to take over the assets of UK. Yeah. Same with EU. So people are moving out. But you're breaking the rules. Okay, then declare it enemy state and take it. And no problem. But we are being asked to follow one set of rules and they follow another.
Dr. Rajapatrana, could you
Yeah, to
respond
answer
on-
you, yeah.
Yes, he asked about why do you think there's unfinished conversation whether globalization has worked or not on Sri Lanka, since in your book you have mentioned it's beyond, a little bit beyond economics.
Yeah, actually I was very convinced when we started reading and working on it that the economics itself will not be able to help us out because you need a context, and the context comes from doing not only economics, but history and other things that I talk about, including, how the system has worked for us. Economic analysis is good, I mean, we can understand the thing, but it is not necessarily sufficient. So that's why I said we should look at history, for example, very important. Provide a context in which globalization takes place. Because it's a new experience for us, living far away in a small country. It's really, it's not just enough to talk about economics there, because there are enough that have been spoken about economics. It is one of the very advanced things, but other things have not come in. History, the context that is prepared, and some of the people who reviewed which liked the idea that I had gone out of the economics thing only. Very good economists have told me that, and so I feel quite safe saying those things. So why not, right? We should get the best possible information to make decisions. And if it means going beyond the economic constraint, so be it.
Dr. Rajapatrana, a quick interruption. So in your book, does it shed light on Sri Lanka's context that on the journey on globalization, on convincing people or people embracing it, whether how do they respond to it in terms of policy and in terms of public perception? What is your reading, and has it been discussed in your book with more empirical evidence?
Yeah, the book is about Sri Lanka. In the sense that we look at Sri Lanka as an example to see what globalization will do to us. Now, if there are some people who say it is going to hurt poor countries like us, and other more thorough economists who do a lot of research find that is not the case. What we find in our book also, there is no such evidence to say that globalization will get us in trouble. We can do what we have been doing always. So good policy, what we are lacking right now is good policies to increase the GDP growth rate. We have done the part of stabilization, and now we are in a more difficult world for us. How to get our economy growth rate up?
Thank you.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
I read the book. One thing I found which struck me was that it's only after reading a book. In Sri Lankan government, all the advisors we got starting from about Caldor, all from UK.
Yes.
But at that time, UK was declining.
Yeah.
Without an empire. Even after they joined the EU, it was in decline. It's only Margaret Thatcher and Keith Joseph who put it. So we also went down with them. But the East Asians and Southeast Asians, they got the American help. They got from Harvard, places like that. I have met Viswanius, who was advising the Singapore, the Dutch guy.
Yeah.
And they are very, very sharp. And they got from Harvard, we got from Sussex School of Development, and some funny creatures that come out of that. No?
I think we have another question from the front row.
So my question is to President Wickremesinghe. I think you are coming close to 50 years in politics. Can you, because Dr. Rajapatrina's book is Policy Challenges of Globalization in Sri Lanka, and I'd like you to weigh in on the Sri Lankan context. Has politics in Sri Lanka changed with regard to the market system and embracing globalization? Because even if you consider the current NPP government, who historically were JVP, extreme leftists, that's not the way they are governing here. And do you think that there is a better context today to do these kind of reforms that we need to do?
Politics in Sri Lanka has not changed. All the political parties generally duck the question. And they go to elections on what you're against, not what you're for. Or as Lee Kuan Yew said, auctioning non-existent resources. Now, at the last election, we had an agreement with the IMF, with the Official Creditors Committee, and with the bondholders. But what did you go to elections? What did the other parties say? One party said, we will renegotiate this with the IMF. Other party said, we are going to make amendments to this. What are you going to do? Now, how are they going to implement that? That's all. So, unless Sri Lanka politics change, where you can take an issue and say, this is what you have to do, running on all this from 56 onwards, running on negative campaigns are not going to work. So, we are still going to be in the same mess.
So, sir, if I was just to follow up on that, I mean, we have always had an anti-trade bias in our policy. Globalization is trading more in people, in services, in goods. Do you still think that trade is looked at negatively in Sri Lanka, in the current political context?
From what I can see, trade is being looked negatively. If you look at the agreements we had with India on trade, all have been not been implemented. That's the biggest market we have. Then we have the Singapore trade agreement, Thai trade agreement. It's not been. So we have this bias against trade, partly by the private sector who don't want them to come in, so that their own spheres of profit making gets affected, partly as a result of the thinking, especially among the left and others. It's surprising, though China changed and Vietnam changed, our left parties, some of them, some thinkers didn't change. So those are the issues we have.
So, President, in that sense, since you mentioned our politics haven't changed, so even our politics have successfully defeated the globalization in that sense, because we really haven't changed. Is that what you?
No. We are now grappling with. World is the globalization is there. World is going, and we are getting left behind. Why is it that Vietnam, which was so far behind us in 1990, the industries minister came to Sri Lanka and asked me as industries minister, how do we get foreign exchange? No, they are going ahead. Not only them, Cambodia is going ahead. Bangladesh is going ahead. So we are grappling with this issue. We are not getting anywhere. Now we have this main issue of how to deal with the US. We are still grappling with it. We have got 30%. You can't survive with 30%. They are going to ask for less. I hope they succeed. But otherwise, now you have to realize one thing. You have never told the US. US is a member of the OCC. And US has signed on to the EFF and the time limits, which means they must help us now. In that game, they also have to, otherwise they are in breach of the agreement. They are preventing from us to repay the bondholders, and we must now tell the IMF, tell the bondholders to go to US and collect the money. Why are we just going and say, we'll buy Coca-Cola from you or we'll buy gas from you? Okay, you are in breach of this.
But can I?
Yes,
go
Dr.
back to
Raivadan.
I don't think the economic policies are going to change very much, because they have no understanding, from I see from far away, and looking at history, to change the color of what they are going to do. They did a good job at the beginning, but about getting growth will not be available to them unless they are prepared to do things that we have talked about for a long time as economists. I don't see that. I saw somebody, I can't remember his name, saying, but we are going to apportion this party to do this thing, the other party to do some other thing. That's totally against the international trade that we know. Who are the people who are going to make public servants? Are they the ones who are going to make decisions what to produce or not to produce? That's going to be a disaster if they actually do it.
More questions from the audience? Yes, I'll come to you and then I'll go to Dr. Roshan. Yes, go ahead, Professor Samarji.
Now, I think the effort here is to understand that the Sri Lankan public has to be, their attitudes have to change. I think you're writing the book partly for that. You're saying we have to talk about history, we have to go beyond economics and so on. Now our president, former president, has been talking about Antarganga, Dura and various things. I don't see that as having made a big impact, that discussion of history. I learnt about it from him, but has it made an impact on our public? My question is, that's the first part. The second part is, has this economic crisis educated our people in some fashion about economics and globalization, much more than words and opinion influencers have, that this particular incident has educated them? That's, I think, Mr. President, you've been in this business for a long time, so I think you know whether it has changed. You'll be able to compare.
Dr. Rajpatrana?
Can I just add?
Yes, please, Dr. Roshan.
Basically, in India, if you look at the Indian context, they had this massive crisis in 1991 and they've never gone back. And actually, because people still have that memory of what it was like pre-1991. So it's kind of the same, following up on what Rohan said. Have we learned from it, or are we going to learn in the future? So that's one question. The other one is, President Wickremesinghe, you talked about different countries like China, Vietnam, how they have completely changed their economic model. Is an authoritarian government necessary for that kind of change? And do democracies fail, democratically elected democracies fail in creating that change? Do we need to have kind of more authoritarian governments? Question.
No, I'm not talking about authoritarian government, it's your mindset. You must know in many countries their policies are fixed. They may differ on the margins, otherwise on personalities, but not here. But remember this matter, I'll tell you, keeping this aside, why did we get into the mess? Keeping aside the two deficits which she has written on, we came to an arrangement with the IMF that we'll have a surplus in the primary budget.
Yeah.
For that we had to increase the VAT, I think from 8 to 15, no?
15, yeah.
15.
18.
So we went along that. And then what happened? The private sector said, you must reduce the VAT. Private sector, and they were joined by the Vietmaga.
Yeah.
I refused. I said, you can't. So they went to Vietmaga and all, they agreed, went to Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who agreed to reduce it. That was our politics. He won. Within 2 months, he reduced it. And then within 2 years, we were out on queues, trying to get a can of diesel.
Yeah.
So this is what happened. And what happened in this city, I think a lot of people suffered. They suffered a lot. And they thought the system has failed them. That was one campaign that was run. It was a very, very confused state. But it's not only our electorate. Remember, the British, where democracy started, parliament or this thing, they thought by getting out of the EU, they'll have a better future. Now they are going down, so there are many countries like that at different times. The electorate, even if you look at US now, the last election was one on negative issues.
Yeah.
President Trump in 2022 was very unpopular now after the January 6th.
Yeah.
They were investigating him. In midterm, the Republicans couldn't win. And then all of a sudden he becomes. So this is a part of today's politics. Maybe because it is driven more by what you hold in your hand and not by what you read in the papers or what you hear on the TV or what you see on the TV or hear on the radio. It's the whole politics have changed, and then it's what you have here that counts.
Dr. Rajapatran, do you want to respond to Professor Samarajiva's question on people's...
The honest answer is I don't know. We have to write another book, say 10 years from now, to see what has happened. We don't know. But from what I see, what they are not doing, doesn't look as if they are going to go back to the thing that we are talking about, liberalizing trade and the things that, to me, the way I seen it, that worked for us. So without it, actually, we can't go very much forward.
I will open up for more questions, but I want to touch upon a point that you made on the negotiations with the tariffs. I think I heard it for the first time that already Americans have agreed on OCC. I mean, we knew, but in this context, with your experience, do you think, President, it's a good way on entering on these negotiations? I mean, President Trump is basically violating all the rules, as you said, like all the trade agreements which has been coming for years and years. Do you still think, since you have interacted and you have a temperature test on interacting with these policymakers, do you think it could have been actually something that we should have told them, or?
I think we should have taken it up. We haven't. We are looking at how to buy gas and all.
Yeah.
Okay, let's wish them all the luck, but I would have started my trading and my negotiation at that time, which this would have been one of the points. Yeah. You are in the OCC, we have all agreed to this. And you are now telling me, don't send these things, so then how am I going to repay? I will certainly work with you to increase it, I also admit it. Why? But you're not like some other countries. You're part of the OCC, then that's where you should start.